You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts and Big Moves. I'm Erin Anderson, your host. So, you guys, guess what? Today we are moving on to the physical boundary. Now, as you guys know, we've talked about the talking and the listening boundaries. These are our foundational boundaries. And just to kind of give you a quick recap, your listening boundary is your number one boundary because it incorporates every single boundary to some degree. You have to listen to your results. You have to listen to your desires, your goals. Like there's so many different things that encompass setting loving boundaries that really help give you respect, notoriety, the ability to be seen and heard. And these are all things, whether you're an entrepreneur mom who is running a household, or an entrepreneur mom who is running a household and a business, right? These are all things that really, really do matter when you are working to achieve some goals, either in your home or your life or your business life, right? Then you also have your talking boundary, right? And your talking boundary is your number two boundary because how you communicate a boundary makes all the difference, right? Um, just a really funny story, and it's totally gonna highlight some of my flaws. But you know, I had my little kids, go figure, actually, while I was recording the last episode of the Bold Hearts Big Moves podcast, and it was all about the talking boundary. And my little kids kept coming in and interrupting as I'm trying to record the podcast and trying to get it out and getting it ready. And I had said many times, like, hey, I'm trying to record a podcast. Can you give me just a few minutes? I'm trying to record a podcast. Can you just give me a few minutes? Well, they kept pushing that boundary, and pushing and pushing and pushing. And finally, I was like, oh, podcast. No, I edited that out because nobody needs to hear that. But it just actually gives a really good example of the differences in the way that we set our boundaries. We can set them with anger or we can set them with love. And even though sometimes the angry boundary is very effective, more often than not, your loving boundary is way more effective when you actually show faith in someone and you communicate that faith that, hey, I know you can do better. Something like that. Like, I know you're amazing. I know you can do better, right? That's going to help a lot with that talking boundary as well. Um, So thinking about how you're communicating things is very, very important when it comes to that talking boundary. Now, if you guys want more information about the listening and talking boundary, go back, listen to the previous episodes. But today I really want to focus on the physical boundary and talk to you about kind of what is a physical boundary? What are some of the biggest things that women actually in general tend to face, and talk about like the differences between home life and your business as well, and what we can do to help fix some of those things, okay? So let's go ahead and talk first and foremost about what is a physical boundary. Now, obviously, the physical space. We're talking about your home, your office space, your bedroom. Um, we're talking about your property lines, right? Like where you live. That all encompasses the physical boundary. Your body as well. This is also something that is personally yours, right? Your things, that is something that you want to consider in a personal boundary. But the one thing that I think a lot of people don't talk about in the physical boundary, and something that I think really definitely needs to be addressed, is your online space. And that is becoming more and more hostile and dangerous for women in general and children, hence the reason why we don't want our kids to be, really exposed to a lot of the online world at such young ages, right? One of my personal physical boundaries when it comes to my online space, there was a uh bling there on my phone, and I want to edit that out. Okay. So I'm going to pause here, and just so you know that this is an editing place, and I'm going to go ahead and re-say that. So one of the things that I personally do with my kids in the physical boundary and their online spaces is I don't like them getting like Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, all of those things, because they can really have a lot of dangerous situations for kids. Um, and at the time of this podcast being recorded, I have teenagers too, and it's the same thing with them. Like, kids really just don't understand the dangers that are out there. And so I really also try to monitor the online spaces the very best I can. I have things on my phone that helps me monitor their phones. And a lot of parents would sit there and say, well, isn't that controlling? And I don't believe it is. I believe that's called being safe, right? Um, because again, like, there's just a lot of spaces that aren't safe for women and kids nowadays. And one of the questions I get consistently is, how do I create more safety for me and my children, right? And I get that from a lot of entrepreneur women who have dealt with trauma, who have dealt with boundary violations, like all kinds of things. And so we definitely want to be able to speak about how to keep not just yourself, but your kids safe as well, because no matter what you're trying to build, if you're trying to build a home environment, or if you're trying to build a business, or both, right? If you feel like you're in consistent danger, no matter what you're trying to build, is going to be very hard to do, because your brain is going to be more concerned with your safety than your results. Okay. So let's talk about some of these violations, right? Or some of these places, I guess I should say, where the physical boundary is so necessary. Travel, okay? Especially traveling alone. If you're a female entrepreneur, sometimes you have to travel alone. I know that's something that I have to do, right? And even though I love it, I absolutely love it, there's always that little piece of me that's like, oh, I really wish I had somebody going with me, right? I just would feel safer if somebody else was going with me. And I'm pretty sure some of you have thought that before, right? Um, any unwanted attention. I know as women, we definitely get some very questionable uh attention. And I'm saying this very delicately right now, and because I don't feel like I have to go too deeply into detail for you to understand what I'm talking about. We just get unwanted attention a lot, right? Um, being a caregiver, right? Now, here's where the entrepreneur mom and like this is where this intersects here, right? Like where you're trying to create a home life like me, right? I've got 6 kids at home. I run my business from home. I do a lot of things from home. And I'm also making sure that I am trying to take care of my kids, making sure they're fed, making sure the house is clean. And so, there's a balance there as a caregiver. Some of you may even be caregiving for an elderly parent. I know that is something that a lot of you deal with as well. Um, burnout, right? How many of you are dealing with some type of burnout? Whether it be burnout from, say, your business, maybe your home environment. Sometimes burnout can be created when you're feeling very unappreciated, which I know is a big thing for female entrepreneurs. Um, the stereotypes, right? Stereotypes are a big deal also when it comes to, uh, you know, dealing in a entrepreneur world. Um, there are mom stereotypes, there's female entrepreneur stereotypes, there's stereotypes for fat, there's stereotypes for thin, there's stereotypes for blonde, there's stereotypes for brunette, redhead, right? Like there's stereotypes all around, and that can be something that we all deal with. For an example, I have a fabulous friend, fabulous coach. I love her with all of my heart and soul. But one of the things that she personally has dealt with is this very thing. Um, this friend of mine, she happens to be a little bit more challenged in her weight, and she has been told before that like people don't wouldn't take her seriously because of it. And so that's been a big issue for her and something that she's really been bothered by. But like she's actually amazing, guys. I'm not gonna tell you who it is because I don't work that way, but like uh I actually kind of feel like the people that told her that like totally missed out on what she can do. She's amazing. She's really amazing. Anyway, your appearance. This can kind of go back with the stereotypes a little bit too, but there's a reason why there's coaches out there that help dress you for your body shape, right? How you show up really makes a difference. I try my best to make sure that when I do a coaching call or when I'm going to be doing a live video or anything that's going to be online where my face is going to be seen, or even in person, especially in person, right? I try really hard to make sure that I'm dressing in a way that really shows my respect for myself and respect for other people, right? Um, and honestly, like a lot of people, we can even go into modesty a little bit here. A lot of people are like, well, modesty is, making sure that you have a high neckline and no short sleeves and no short shorts and you don't show a lot of skin. And while that might be true, modesty really is more about a mindset. Modesty is really about dressing the way that you view yourself so that way you feel good with who you truly are, right? And we're going to get into more of that in just a second, but appearance really does matter. Exclusion, not only just in a male-dominated world, right, where if you're trying to become a female entrepreneur, you've got a business, maybe you've got a podcast like me, a YouTube channel like me, a coaching business like me, or maybe you're doing other things, or maybe even you are a female entrepreneur who is actually working in a Fortune 500 company, right, with men. And this isn't saying anything negative against the guys, but sometimes it can be really, really hard to connect with your colleagues when it's a very male-dominated thing because they don't seem to think about what would be comfortable. Like one of the examples I saw was um this this gal, she was working in a brick and mortar business. She was a high-end earner in sales, and a lot of the other, well, yeah, I mean, she was really, it was like 15 guys to every woman or something like that. Well, the sales floor decided to get together and have a fun time, a party, and they decided to do it at a bar, um, and shoot hoops and kind of get a little rowdy. And, you know, the gal that I was talking to, she felt pretty uncomfortable with that situation, and so did a lot of the other women, just because, they come from a much softer background. They don't like the rough and tumble. They don't like being one of the guys, right? And so that definitely created some issues with them. But more often than not, what I really see is exclusion from other women, where, there's maybe some catty behavior. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're a mompreneur or, a entrepreneur that's building a business, whether you're building a home, a business, doing both, there's cattiness, right? Like, we deal with exclusion, and that can really be a big issue when it comes to your physical boundary. Misinterpretation. How often, and that can also be a talking boundary, right? Where we are speaking and we say something and somebody misinterprets what we say. Now, so one of the things that uh can definitely happen, like I said, misinterpretation is a talking boundary too. Like, these boundaries really do intersect and they do interweave, right? But and so it's really important that we're very clear with what we say. And I'm going to go into how to deal with these in just a minute. But I had a gal that she had uh a guy, she was married with kids, guys, but she had a guy that she was working with that kept trying to get her to do things that she was not okay with, right? And she had said something one time, and I don't even remember what it was, but he decided to interpret it as being an invitation. And I think that sometimes we do get that kind of a problem. And that can also go into the sexual boundary as well, not just our physical boundary, right? And then I think another thing that we do as moms and female entrepreneurs is uh, neglect our physical and our mental health. Because I think out of a lot of the women that I've served in the last 12 years, um, w- we tend to really want to make sure that other people are taken care of. We have a nurturing side to us, right? And that can be both your blessing and it can also be your downfall. You have to be very, very careful with making sure that you fill your bucket, so that way you can fill the buckets of other people as well. So the question is, what do we do about these boundaries? What do we do about these boundary violations? Or to make sure they don't become boundary violations, like, how do we put these together? So I came up with a list to help you guys, whether you're traveling, whether you're working, whether you're trying to deal with kids or even like a difficult business partner, right? I came up with a list of ways that you can use these boundaries because remember, a boundary is all about what you are going to do. So for an example, like with my home, I have a security system in my home because I have kids to protect. I want to feel safe when I'm asleep at night. I want to make sure that my things are protected, right? And I want to make sure that my animals are protected. Like I want to make, and also like if something did happen, I would want it on camera, right? So these are some things that I personally have put into place. Um, and your physical boundary is a lot like that. It's what y any boundary. It's all about what you are going to choose to do. Okay. So let's talk about travel, right? Um, one of the things that you can do is number one, make sure that you are planning. Planning ahead what it is you're going to do, where you're going to go, and then make sure that you are researching also the best accommodations. You want to be in a safe neighborhood. You want to be in a nice place, right? So that way you're not feeling that anxiety all the time. Um, so making sure that you're planning, you are researching where you're going to go and what you're going to do is key. I would also mention to make sure that you are sharing this plan with someone else who is not going. Making sure that your location, well, okay, I should back up for a second, but uh, you also want to make sure that you share this with somebody who isn't going with you. So that way, like if something ever happened, you can uh have somebody say like this was her plan. And so it's a lot easier to find footprints if somebody else knows like what the plan is. Okay. Um, and then I was also going to say make sure that your location services are on when like on your phone and any other devices so that way you're also easily trackable to people who care and love about you. Love about you, care and love you. Okay. Also making sure that you avoid any late night meetings. Um, it's really important in my opinion to make sure that uh, no matter where you're at, if you're in an unfamiliar area, you want to make sure that you're back at a decent time to, number one, like if you're doing a retreat with clients, which is something I love to do, um, we also want to like recap the day. And so it's not always so much about safety, even though that is a safety tip, right? You also want to make sure that you're recapping the day, you're recapping what it is that they've learned and making sure that you're making connections with that client as well. Um, Second, if something feels unsafe, make sure that you voice it to anybody else that's with you, right? Number one, if something feels unsafe and you just kind of get that nagging feeling and you're by yourself, just don't do it, right? But two, if something feels unsafe and you're with a group of women or just a group in general, don't be afraid to speak up. A few years ago, I was on a retreat with uh some other female entrepreneur women that I just absolutely loved. And we had a great time, but we were walking through, we decided that we needed to go get groceries. And we decided to walk through the streets of San Diego, California. And at first I was like, yeah, no big deal. Like it's just down the street, not it's totally fine. Um, and then I started walking through the streets, and there's all these homeless people. We had our wallets and purses out. They were defecating on the sidewalks, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not like I am not feeling safe with this at all. Well, we got to where we were gonna go, and then we were going to try to walk back. And I said something. I was like, guys, you know what? No, I will get an Uber. We will have an Uber drive us back. And at first, there was a little bit of pushback, but I was like, no, we're gonna get an Uber because like you guys might feel great and everything like that, but personally for me, I am not feeling that safety. And so making sure that, you step up, say how you feel, and make sure that you honor it at least for you is also very important. And the last thing I was going to say is also make sure that you use security apps, like making sure that your location is on and trackable. Making sure that you can get access to immediate emergency services, anything like that. So there are apps out there that you can get on your phone, or like a smartwatch that will help track you where you're at. Okay, so and help keep you safe. Um, Second, like, what about the unwanted attention? So there is, again, just being like making sure that your talking boundary is really high, your listening boundary is really high. If you are getting that nagging, right, that just something is not right in the attention you're getting, you need to listen to that, right? And there's nothing wrong with stating it like, hey, I'm here for business and business only. If they're still not getting it, then you get to make some decisions like, what am I going to do? If you don't stop, then I'm leaving and this business deal is off. No amount of money is more important than your safety, in my personal opinion. And so no business deal really is worth you feeling like you have to compromise your physical safety. Making sure that you also have some good distance between you and any other person. You're also talking a little bit about the energetic boundary here because sometimes you can just get a vibe from people, right? There's nothing wrong with not wanting to sit next to someone. Um, Sometimes that's actually one of the best things you can do. You might not know why or have a really good reason why that you can explain that you just don't feel comfortable around someone. Um, but there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why you have to pretend like you are okay with something. So making sure that you have some good physical distance with someone who is giving you unwanted attention, making unwanted advances, anything like that, that is a really good idea as well. And also just making sure that you are positioned in a place where other people can see you and making sure that you are not in a space where you can be cornered. Make sure that you are always within the vicinity of a door if that is something that you might need some help with, right? So number three, caregiving and work-life balance. Uh, Number one, making like we're also kind of getting a little bit into the time boundary here because I know one of the things that female entrepreneurs struggle with is making sure that they're scheduling enough time for not just their business, because business can take up so much of our time. And it's okay to once in a while have a day where it's just a bit slammed. You've got a lot of things going on, right? Um, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you have a good work-life balance. And so that's going to take a time boundary as well, which we will get into in a future podcast. But making sure that you have a calendar up so people can see like what your appointments are, making sure that you are very clear that, hey, I'm doing this and this and this. I need some quiet. Could you guys please honor that, right? That's going to be really helpful. One thing I really like to do with my own children, and I actually just barely did this with them, is I just went to them one on like each one and said, "Hey, I'm going to be recording a podcast right now. I could use some quiet." And honestly, guys, I mean, they were a little noisy in the background just a second ago. I hope it's not in the podcast. But it happens. I mean, I have little children that don't quite grasp certain things, right? But the kids that do understand this, I've explained to them that if they can honor my time, while I'm podcasting or while I'm on with the client, and not consistently interrupt me so that way I can do the work that I need to do, then that means that I get off earlier, and that means that we can do things that I can do more things with them, whether that be helping them with their chores or homework or baking cookies or whatever it is that the kids really want me to do. And so, making sure that I'm really clear with my children when I need some time commitments. Also making sure that you have a really good schedule and that it's color coded. Like that you have work events a certain color, family events a certain color, maybe doctor's appointments a certain color, appointments with clients, like there's all kinds of things. Like you want to think about like where your time is mostly going. And also making sure, and this is actually going to go into the health bound like the health piece of these boundaries, but also just making sure that you have time for you. And I'm going to dive deeper into that in just a second. Um, Making sure also that you outsource where possible. Now, so when running a home, uh, you may not be hiring nannies, you might not be hiring cooks, you might not be hiring cleaners. However, it is not all up to you. I am a firm believer that kids need to understand how to help out around your home and yard, and that we need to keep things nice, tidy, and organized, right? And so one of the things that I try to do is I try to personally make sure that I'm organizing one or just keeping one room a day organized, whether that be the kitchen or my office or the front room or just something. Because it makes chores a lot easier on my kids. Okay. But two, it also makes life a lot easier on me. It also really helps my time boundary. And again, we'll get into more of the time boundary stuff really soon. That's coming up in a future episode. But I think that making sure that my kids are also taking time to clean their rooms, making sure that they're taking the time to do their chores and to help out help out with some of their responsibilities, I think is key. But there's also something to be said about outsourcing pieces of your business, right? I outsource the editing of this podcast. I outsource video editing. I outsource a few different things in my business. The next piece also goes kind of into your time boundary as well. And like I said, again, like this is just another way that the boundaries intertwine, right? But if you're wanting to avoid burnout, that also means that you need to schedule breaks for yourself as well as playtime. This is also something that's going to make a major difference in your mental health because, number one, you need to be able to have some breaks. If you're consistently in front of your grindstone and working, 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 you're going to feel very unbalanced. And when you have that unbalance, it definitely leads to overwhelm and burnout. We're talking also about the fourth pillar here. Now, if you want more information about the pillars, I would direct you to my other podcast, The Other Side of the Struggle. I talk about each one of the seven pillars there. But we're talking about it a little bit here, as the fourth pillar a little bit here, the difference between overwhelm and play. Um, the opposite of overwhelm and burnout is actually organization and play. Um, because again, people who stick to doing what they say they're going to do, right? That's a time boundary. And they make sure that they have breaks where maybe they go read a book, or maybe they just drink a cup of tea and journal for a minute. They just find some peace and quiet during the day. These are far more healthy entrepreneurs and moms because they're just taking a little slice of heaven for themselves. It's very important that you rest and rejuvenate, um, as well as play, because things will, like, if something's feeling overwhelming, it's because it's stopped being fun. It feels complicated, it feels confusing, and it just feels hard. I've mentioned this before, but when I was teaching school, I had little kids that were coming in to me, really overwhelmed with math, right? Believing that math was hard, believing that math was confusing, believing that math is bad. And, a couple of things that I would tell them is number one, look for the patterns, and that so applies here as well. And also make sure you look for the fun. We started, like, I did a measurement unit and we measured how many kids it took to get to a certain place, right? So they were my students were laying from foot to head, foot to head, foot to head, right? Then we decided to try it a different way, right? How many kids would, like, laying side to side, right? How many kids did it take to measure a certain thing? When it came to multiplication, I got to show them all of the mysteries that multiplication uh had. And so we did mystery multiplication, and the kids loved that. And by the end of the year, they were having so much fun with math that they aced their test and just had so much fun. Another thing to help avoid burnout is also learning what your yeses and nos are. Like, what do you really feel a no towards? Um, I actually recently, just to give you an example of this, right? I recently was asked to have a meeting with someone, and I've had previous dealings with this particular person before, and it's caused me to have some real trust issues with them. I said no to the meeting, even though the person asking was genuine, and they wanted me to meet with another person. Like, they were trying to schedule for the other person. And I had to say no, even though it would have given me maybe a little bit more visibility in what it is I'm trying to do. When we say no, we're literally saying that I have enough faith in myself that I can find the right connections, the right people, and make the right calls, right? But also, if something is like a total yes, then I think that we need to be very careful here too, because we need to take a look and say, okay, well, this is a priority yes. This one is a priority yes. This one is a yes, but a not right now, right? This is kind of like one of those things that are kind of that urgent, important category. We set goals, we want to make sure they're done by a certain time, and so they kind of get pushed up into that category. We want to make sure that we have very visible and clear yeses and nos, and that we're making sure that we understand which things can absolutely be taken off our plate, as well as the things that need a little more time and attention, as well as the things that need to be done right now. Okay. Uh, the fifth thing, making sure that you're managing stereotypes and appearance. Number one, this really comes down to your self-confidence. One boundary that I personally have for myself, and it works very well in all boundaries, actually, is just this idea that I'm going to respect myself. I'm not going to believe a stereotype. I'm not going to uh feel like I am being held back by a certain stereotype. I personally want to be healthy. I want to look a certain way because it matches my energy, but it's not because of what somebody else thinks or says or does. I don't care about that. I care. I have my own back. And that's what this really is all about when you're managing your stereotypes and appearance. It is you dress to have your own back. You look like you have your own back. You speak like you have your own back. And you give other people the right to have their own opinion. Um, I had somebody that was, I don't know what they were thinking, but just not very nice, walk up to me and they were like, you know what? I know you're trying to look professional, but I think you just look fat. Right? And like that doesn't happen very often. That was like, I think once in all the time I've been coaching. And I legitimately said to them, well, you're welcome to that opinion if that makes you happy. Right? That's one of the ways you manage stereotypes and appearance is you just allow other people their space to have whatever thoughts they want to have. People can say whatever they want to, but it doesn't mean that you have to take it as true. And this is also another time where we're going to be using our listening boundary as well as our speaking boundary because I want to stay respectful because I just like being respectful. Um, and there's no harm, and it's not disrespectful in any way to say to someone, that's a really interesting opinion you have. You're welcome to have that if that makes you happy, right? No, it's not passive aggressive, it's not mean. It is literally just a fabulous way to respond. Um, but if these stereotypes, like if they keep pushing it on you, the second thing I love to do in this situation is just listen for the key words and phrases and literally say their words back to them, right? Like, so you just said this. Is this what you meant? Oh, well, how do you feel about saying that? Fine, cool. Well, most people would think that that's not a very nice thing to say. So how do you feel about not being very nice, right? Um, and literally just put it back with them. Leave somebody else's problems with them. We don't have to pick it up energetically. We don't have to pick it up psychologically. We do not have to pick it up. It is their issue. They get to keep it. Um, when somebody excludes you from business, you can also do this exact same thing. Number one, it's a boundary to make sure that you're creating your own spaces, your own people, your own tribe. Um, I look for people who are super authentic, very genuine, can take feedback. They're open to learning, but also open to their own mind. Like they don't think that everybody knows better than them, but they're open to the idea that somebody might, right? Um, they are very dedicated to their business as well as their personal lives. I look for people like that in my personal community, and even though like boundaries do come up quite a bit, and I help even some of these ladies with their boundaries, and even me, like I look at some of my own boundaries and I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to work on that boundary today. Boundaries are something that we're going to consistently be working on just simply because we're consistently growing. But I do look for people that want really high energy, high results, and they can take some serious feedback, okay? So when I have that, exclusion really doesn't happen. Um, but if it does, I get to make the decision, is that something that I'm really going to draw a ton of attention to? Is that something that I'm going to be offended by? Is that something that I really need to say something about, right? Like those are some of the things that I do, and some of the things that I think about. But almost immediately, no matter what happens, I drop it. I don't take that on as truth. If somebody is going to be exclusive towards me, that is their issue. And they're the ones missing out, not me. Um, if you're feeling very hurt by the exclusive actions of another, I really also want to encourage you to check into your relationship that you have with yourself, if that's the case, and make sure that it's solid because most likely, if you're offended by someone excluding you, um, it might mean something about you, uh, and your relationship with yourself. And what I mean by that is, like I know, like before when people would exclude me, and I've been excluded before, it just doesn't really happen to me now. Um, I would wonder what's wrong with me, right? Like that's the first thing that came up to my mind, and that is a symptom of someone who does tend to not have a great relationship with themselves. Because if that's your first thought, there's some element in your subconscious saying that you're not worthy enough. Um, However, when you love yourself, it goes to, well, okay, that's their issue, right? I think I'm pretty awesome. That's not narcissistic. That is not mean. That is not bad. You should feel very confident in yourself, and who you are as a person, and know that you make good decisions and that you are very considerate and kind towards other people. If you know these things and you love yourself, it's really hard for other people to exclude you, and for you to really care, honestly. But if it's happening a lot in your work environment, then one of the things that I would definitely suggest is take a look and see if there's other job opportunities for you, because you also do want to be in a place where you're appreciated. Um, and again, like, make sure that you're building an inclusive place. There are other people that want inclusion. They want to feel loved. They want to feel important. They want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want somebody that's going to be kind and loving and patient with them. And that is absolutely something that you can do. Um, Dealing with misinterpretation, again, this comes down to your listening and talking boundaries as well as your physical boundary, because again, somebody can misinterpret, think that you're giving crossed signals, and that can cause some very scary situations for female entrepreneurs, I know for a fact. And so, making sure that you are very, very direct, very, very clear in what you're trying to say. Um, and, also just making sure that with your physical and your mental health, make sure that you're taking time for you, that there's things that are not on your schedule, that somebody else has got the kids for some time. Make sure that you have got a good support system. Now, some of you, I don't think it's something that a lot of you deal with, because I think a lot of you are finding your own tribes and you have people that can help you. But if you personally feel like there's not a lot of support there for you to help take some of the kids off of your, or some of the load off of your plate, I should say, this is again where we get to go to the other boundary where we delegate. Um, Make sure that, and you make sure that you keep that time very, very precious. You might have to hire a babysitter. You may have to hire somebody else to take care of a task. Like whatever it is, like something like that is an urgent and important uh piece in your time. This is also time boundary, right? Um, that you don't overlook, because you cannot produce if you're consistently being hacked to death. Uh, my friend Tiffany Peterson and actually a couple other coaches talk about this fable where there was this golden goose, or this goose that was laying golden eggs, I should say, and it would lay one golden egg a day, and the farmer would take it and trade it for some things that he needed, some things that he wanted. And pretty soon he started getting greedy and he killed the golden goose, wanting to get all the eggs at once, and that was the end of the golden eggs, right? Our our physical health and our mental health is really important. If we don't take time to nurture those things, then it's like we're killing the golden goose. Um, you need to make sure that you have on your schedule time for your physical health, whether that be nutrition, whether that be sleep, whether that be, and this is going to take some time boundaries as well, right? But, or whether that be exercise, whatever it is, and as well as making sure that you're taking some downtime to just, again, have some fun so you're not getting into that overwhelm. And also making sure that you personally are talking with a coach or at least a mental health professional, right? We hire coaches for our physical health. We also need to hire coaches or professionals for our mental health as well. If you guys, and I'm just going to put a shameless plug here, if you guys want some help with your personal boundaries and you want to create more clients, money, and success, as well as love for yourself in your personal and your business lives, go ahead and schedule a call with me. There is a link in the description below, and we can give you a free boundaries assessment so that way you can know, and we'll go through it 2 or 3 things so that way you can take away and know what you need to do differently to start changing your boundaries today. So make sure you schedule that call. And then again, lastly, also with your online space is be very, very clear in your descriptions, what it is that you're going to do and what the space is for. Make sure that you're very, very clear in your questions that you ask before people join. Now, also make sure that your email settings are up. Make sure that your Facebook settings are up. And I also choose to ignore certain emails. Like if they look fishy to me, I'll delete them. If they're not fishy, that person's going to reach out to me again, and I will just give them my honest feedback. Because remember, again, people that are in my circles don't mind feedback. They can look at it as true or untrue for themselves, right? And as well as on Facebook, Instagram, things like that, I get really inappropriate messages all the time sent to me on Instagram. I don't even read them. I don't even look at them. I just delete them every single time because I don't want to give them any time of day at all. Remember that your boundary is all about what you can do, what you have control over. There are so many decisions that you can make right now to keep your physical spaces so much safer and clearer and more organized. If you guys, again, would love some help, don't forget, go ahead and schedule that time. And let's get you on a boundaries assessment call with me. And also, if you've got questions, feel free to message the show. We have people that do answer those questions. We will have somebody reach out to you either through Facebook or through your email. So be watching for that. Or I might just address it in the podcast as well. Okay. Lastly, there are some big things coming up for Bold Hearts Big Moves. So stay tuned for that. I know that these are things that are really going to excite you. So, my loves, until next week, keep your boundaries up. See you soon. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.